In this clip, I'll be running some audio comparisons between the Akai MPC3000 and the MPC X, along with the MPC3000 vintage mode, which is intended to mimic the sound of the original 3000. For best results, I recommend watching the clip in full screen mode and set the resolution to 1080p via the settings widget down on the bottom right. But first, I'll explain a few things about how this was done while I roll some of the pre-preparation footage. If you enjoy the clip, hit like, subscribe, and check out the channel for deep dives, plus tips and tricks on samplers, synthesizers, and drum machines, including those featured in this clip. There's also the TONELAB sample pack store for those after ready-made MPC or SP1200 kits. There's a collection of MPC packs created on the MPC3000 that were imported into the MPC2000 and 4000 plus the X, which are compatible with all subsequent MPCs. Check them out via tonelab.au or check the description below for links. If you're on Instagram, then drop by for a look at TONELAB. With that aside, the point of this clip is so that you, the listener, can be the judge and decide what your ears perceive as favourable. I won't try to persuade you that any one is better. Instead, I'll just capture the audio as faithfully as I can, then I'll play back the samples side by side at various pitches. This should give your ears a good indication of what each sampler is doing to the original audio. Now, I could have, but didn't bother, with hardware testing equipment, as I'm presenting this as an earshot test. I really don't want your eyes to influence your decision making because essentially that's not what perceived sound is about. And for those really wanting to make the most of it, I suggest looking away from the screen or closing your eyes periodically, because sometimes it's good to turn off other senses so you can concentrate on what's coming in through your ears. For that reason, I'd also recommend listening through a big pair of speakers if you have access to them, or use a good quality pair of headphones. I really don't think there's much to gauge via smaller devices like laptops and phones. So I guess you could say this exercise won't be that different to wine tasting, but for your ears. Feel free to drop your critique or describe your perceived interpretation in the comments below, but let's keep it civil. We all interpret these things invariably through different lenses and different environments, and then each of us have individual taste as well. For the first of three examples, I'll use something that's got a nice round bottom end and something that won't put the clip at risk of a copyright strike. For that reason, I'll use the original Roland TR-808 analog drum machine from 1980. I'll sample the examples into each MPC and play them back at various pitches, which I think is important rather than just comparing the default pitch. A reasonable approach for the ear test, I thought, would be to run the input signal into each converter as hot as I can before clipping. And this way, I'm using as much dynamic range, aka bit depth, as I can. I realise it's not the most accurate way to measure converters, but it's good enough for the listening test, especially if you factor in that YouTube's audio stream will also apply some measure of bandwidth compression. For that reason, I've made the undisturbed, unprocessed waveforms available for you to download and inspect yourselves. Check the links in the description below. So I've cooked up a quick electro beat on the 808, which is an analog drum machine that possesses its own slightly varying regenerative sounds. So for that reason, I've recorded the 808 into my DAW via my RME 5-phase converter at 24-bit 48 kHz, which is much higher resolution than what these samplers are recording. Doing it like this allows me to relay a static version of the beat through each sampler without the regenerative variance that occurs from sound to sound inside the 808. And so I've put the MPC X into vintage MPC3000 mode. Then I'll disable the vintage mode and run the same comparison. The MPC3000 has balanced inputs, so I'll use the MPCX's rear balanced input to keep the signal delivery to each unit as similar as possible. I'll record an optimal level of each example into both the MPC X and the MPC3000 using the same balanced TRS MOGAMI Gold cable, which I've put links for in the description below if you want to purchase them. I highly recommend them, they're fantastic quality cables. And for those wondering, the MPC X is currently in 16-bit mode, which is the same as the MPC3000, and also recording at the same sample rate of 44,100 samples per second. So evenly matched in that respect too. I can say after recording the outputs from both samplers, I measured a variance of a mere minus 0.1 dB between their maximum peaks. No normalization, no EQ, nor any processing. Just straight audio into the RME converters, again, as hard as I could hit them, at 24-bit 48K, and the RME inputs were calibrated beforehand using various test tones. So I'm satisfied everything was captured nicely, which is a similar effort to what I put into my sample packs. I'm sure many of you rely on tuning your samples on a regular basis, so for that reason I'll trigger various semitones, aka half steps, within a range of an octave in both directions. And without getting too technical, samplers have their own unique mechanisms in place to alter pitch, and this is where you may notice variances or where the footprint of a particular sampler can tend to reveal itself a little more vividly. So let's get into it. I'll mute my microphone, which I'm sure you're happy for me to do right now. This way you're only hearing the recorded audio files. Next, let's do the same again, but with a beat I punched in on the Oberheim DX from 1982, which has a palette of 12-bit sampled sounds. For the last test, I've cooked up a beat on the Roland TR909 from 1982, which features a mix of analog regenerative sounds plus 12-bit samples. If you want any of these sounds, you can find ready-made sample packs for your MPC or SP1200 in the TONELAB store. These were created using the converters on the MPC3000 and then loaded into the MPC2000, 4000 and the X. These will suit any model MPC since the MPC2000. So check out tonelab.au or check the description below. Anyway, that's all for this clip. I hope you found it interesting. If so, hit the thumbs up, subscribe and check out the channel for more tips and tricks for various MPCs and SP1200s. For those on Instagram, drop by for a look at TONELAB. Thanks for watching and bye for now.